Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on Project HQ. My name is Ryan Chaplinsky and I'll be taking you through this webinar for the next hour or so. As we're going through the webinar today, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions in the question box in the GoToMeeting menu. And then any questions that are asked, we will answer them at the end of the call here. The goal for today and what we're going to look at here today is a workflow to basically just kind of look at all of Project HQ and kind of condense it into what Project HQ can do in order to get the most out of what this program offers. So we're going to kind of look at several different facets of the setup and of the usage of Project HQ. And the goal will be to kind of take a job and the setup in HQ from start to finish. We will, of course, do that pretty quickly since we only have an hour here. I'm hoping to take about 45 minutes to go through the presentation, and then we'll have 15 minutes or so for questions, but we'll see how long it takes to get through. So again, the idea is that we're going to have a job already set up in Foundation. I'm going to talk about a few things in the setup here first. So before we even start using Project HQ, of course, there's a couple of things we want to set up and make sure that are ready to go. So then as we start loading jobs in and using Project HQ, we are able to use all the functionality and all the features that the program offers. So once we are logged into Project HQ, that will present us with a home screen here. And then anybody who is an administrator, when we set up users, if we make them an administrator of Project HQ, they're going to have access to the setup section. And there's just a couple of general items that I want to talk about here. These are all things that we've covered in other webinars, and there are more detailed videos out there. And then, of course, Foundation support and myself in training can help you if you have more detailed questions on some of the things I'm going to gloss over here today. So the first thing that we typically address in the setup is pulling things from Foundation, how this is connected to the Foundation accounting database. If you are using the Foundation accounting package, then Project HQ is connected to that, and it allows us to import information from Foundation into Project HQ. And also we would be able to push certain records from Project HQ into Foundation so they update the accounting software. So from this integrations setting, there's a good list here of all the things that we can import from Foundation. So to get started, and this is typically what I do in the very first training session with users, is we go through and we start importing this information from Foundation. There are two main things that are happening here by doing an import from the accounting software. The first obvious thing is, of course, it's saving you the data entry. If we already have a vendor, for example, ABC subcontractor, we already have them in the Foundation accounting software in AP as a vendor, we can import them here so we're not having to recreate that record. More importantly, the system is linking these records together. We know that ABC subcontractor in HQ is tied to vendor 123 or whatever vendor it was in Foundation. And this is important because when we push information from here in HQ into the Foundation accounting package, we need to know, what companies match up to what vendors in Foundation, what jobs in HQ match up to what jobs in Foundation, so we're passing information along correctly. So the best and the easiest way when we get awarded a new job or we hire a new subcontractor, we're adding a sub to the system, we do that in Foundation first, and then you can import that over here into HQ. So it's doing those two things for you, creating the entry, but then also linking those records together. Now, there is flexibility with this. You don't have to set up things in Foundation first. You can, for example, set up ABC subcontractor in Project HQ first, and then you can set up ABC subcontractor in Foundation, and then you can link them together. So we can still create that link if you have an existing company in one system and that same company in the other system. You wouldn't be able to do an import there since we have it already, but you still could link those records together. And that's the most important piece. And so I try to stress here that the best and the easiest way is to set things up like jobs and vendors and customers, set them up in Foundation first and then import here because it is doing that linking and it's also creating the record for you. So we would start here just by building the database. This is going to give us a good start to our master directory or contact list here in HQ. It's not going to be everybody. ABC subcontractor, that vendor that we import from AP, that's going to create a company in HQ. But under that company, We have the project managers, the superintendents, the foremen. We have all the people that work at ABC Subcontractor. They don't live in Foundation anywhere. There's no record where we have the PM for ABC Subcontractor. So there would inherently be additional contacts that we would have to set up, either import via a spreadsheet or enter manually into HQ. But this should be a very good start to all the contacts that you're going to have in your list. But if they don't pay you in AR, you don't pay them in AP, and you don't have these individuals in Foundation anywhere, there are some of those contacts that we would still have to set up in HQ. You're going to have a larger directory of contacts here than you would in Foundation vendors or customers. You don't have to be an admin to import all of that. So certain things in that integration section, you do have to navigate there. To get our cost codes moved from Foundation to HQ, to get equipment items or inventory items moved, you do have to go to the setup section. However, for contacts and for projects, we can do that importing from the project list or from the contact list. Someone who's not an admin user, a regular user, if you will, they would be able to do these imports as well. From the project list, there's a gray ellipse button in the top right. We would select that and we can import projects from Foundation from here. And the functionality and how you do this works the same whether you're in the setup or you're here. And then same thing from the contact list. We're able to then take our contacts and we can import companies from vendors or customers in Foundation, and then people, the only people we have in Foundation are your employees. So we would import those and it would create people under your company. So we can do that from these lists. One other thing in the setup in this same integration section is our connection to a file hosting service. And so in order to be able to upload outside documents, pictures to the photo log, attach a drawing to a submittal, anything that might be a file that exists outside of HQ, you do have the ability to upload these attachments into HQ. However, at this time, we don't do any file storage on the HQ website. So what we do is we sign in or connect to one of these 3 file hosting services. And then if you upload a drawing when you're entering a submittal, if you attach a drawing to that, it's going to save that drawing in OneDrive or Dropbox or Google Drive. It'll live and take up space there, but we'll have access to it. We'll be able to view it, attach the attachment. You'll work with it in ProjectHQ. There are 2 places where we have to sign into this. In the setup section here, again, not everyone's going to have access to this, and only one person can sign into the file hosting service here. Whoever signs in here, and that should be an admin or somebody who has the most access in the file hosting service, somebody along those lines, that person would sign in here. And then in Google Drive, Dropbox, or OneDrive, it's going to create a ProjectHQ folder in that person's directory or in their OneDrive. Then if, for example, we have, say, 5 other project managers that are going to use this, when those other 5 individuals go to log into ProjectHQ for the first time, they're not going to have access to setup. They're not going to go here to do anything. When they go to a job for the first time, there'll be a sign in there, and they can use their credentials, sign in under their personal, Dropbox or OneDrive, as long as that ProjectHQ folder is shared with them, the one that gets created when we sign in here in setup, then everyone's going to be working out of the same folder. So that is generally how it works. We could probably spend 45 minutes just talking about this. When it comes to signing in through the HQ website, all you have to do is select which of these file hosting services you're using and which one you're signed into. And then in my case, because I'm already in Dropbox on my computer, it just signs me right in. I'm not presented with any credentials. I don't have to enter a password or anything because I'm already signed into Dropbox on my computer. Pro tip, if you need to enter credentials, maybe I don't want it to use mine. Maybe I don't want it, maybe it's my personal Dropbox and I want to use the Dropbox account that we set up for ProjectHQ. It is an option to create one Dropbox account that everybody uses if everyone does not have their own. And so if you want it to prompt you for credentials, if I don't want it to just assume me here, I want to be able to enter an email and a password, you can do one of 2 things. Either sign out of Dropbox on your computer and then sign in here, or you can open up ProjectHQ in an incognito tab in Google Chrome. I think they call it a private window in Microsoft Edge, And basically that's just opening up a web browser that's not connected to anything else. It doesn't pre-fill passwords or none of the functions that autofill things or where it looks up an ID or credentials. It's not going to do that if you're in an incognito tab. So there is a way to make it prompt you for credentials if you need. But there's two places we sign in: company level sign in setup, one person, and then each individual person would sign in one time when they log in for the first time, and they can use their own personal if they have their own account, as long as the ProjectHQ folder is shared with everyone who's using ProjectHQ. When we set up a project, of course, we're going to be able to enter daily logs here in ProjectHQ. I shouldn't say of course. We have the ability to enter daily logs here in ProjectHQ, and the weather log can be completely automatic. We're out here on the internet can get the weather for us. So in the setup section here, before we start pulling jobs over, if we want the weather to automatically generate, we would go to weather logs here in setup, and then it's a very basic setup here under settings. We're going to turn this on, or if the weather doesn't affect your jobs, you can leave it turned off, and then you can set up to 3 times a day and what days of the week you want the weather to generate. Now this just defines the rules and turns it on for the system. What we'll see here today when I pull my job over and we go through the job setup, there's another green switch just like this that you have to turn on in the project, and we have to do that for each job. We have to input the time zone, and we have to make sure that we have an address and a location for that job. Otherwise, there's no way to get the weather. So if we set this up, it does not mean that every single job just starts getting the weather. Part of the job setup and part of the workflow of getting a job created is going to be enabling that weather and making sure that we have accurate location and time zone set. And that way, if I have jobs in 3 time zones, I'm getting the weather at 8 a.m. regardless of where the job is. So this is just defining the rules. And then in the project, we would turn that on. The only other thing in the setup here that's going to kind of pertain to what we're going through today with this workflow is the ability to customize things. So most of the other setup here, aside from users and permissions and notifications and settings, just about everything else is us allowing you to customize a record. So we can create our own document types. We can add user-defined fields to documents. You can pick and choose what fields you want to be required in an entry screen. You can change what's in a drop-down. So if you go to pick something from a pull-down menu and you want to add something to that list, you can. And then for anything that's printable, so not companies, not people, not jobs, but RFIs, POs, submittals, anything you can produce a form, you have a template. And so all of those things can be modified here in the setup. We let you customize all of these different records, and in all of those records, you can customize those things that I just listed. So as you're going through an entry, if you feel like something's missing or you want more data or you want another character box for you to be able to type in some text or something, you are able to add those here in the setup. So for today, we're assuming, of course, we've got all of our setup done. We've got our contact list established. I've got my sign into Dropboxes done here. I turned on my weather log. We're basically ready to start using this thing. And so we have our first project. It's already set up in Foundation. So when the job was awarded, we followed the normal procedures that we used prior to ever using ProjectHQ, and we set up a job in Foundation. We loaded that job up with a budget. We have our location or the address for the job number, the name, who the customer is, that basic information. For the purposes of today, we're not going to look in Foundation. I kind of assume that you know how to set up jobs to some degree in the accounting software, or somebody there does. So that job is already created. We're going to pick it up here in HQ by importing it over and then going through the additional setup items that are going to be specific or unique to ProjectHQ. So we can import projects from the project menu. Again, you don't have to navigate to setup to do that. We can go to projects here. And then in the top right corner, there's that ellipse button. We can select import jobs from Foundation. This is going to show us any active jobs that have not been imported into HQ yet, or that are not linked to an existing HQ job. And so in my case here, this is the one that I've had set up for today. We would select import here. And that simply creates the job record. So now in my project list, it would have pulled some of that basic info from my project over here to HQ, and that project is now added to my list. To get the most out of this project list before we go into that job, this list does have some functionality to it. So here we can move columns around. Maybe I want my project title maybe I want the address to be the first column. You can grab that and drag it and then move the address farther over to the left or right. You can change how these are sorted by clicking on the column. You can right click on the columns and you can pick and choose which ones you want to see and then change the sorting. And then there's also a filter that can be applied here. In the top right, there's a funnel icon. Enabling that allows me to search these columns where I have these descriptions. And then for project stage, which is like a job status or a stage in the job, we're able to filter on that. So if I want to just show my projects that are everything but completed, I can filter that list. I can filter on project type. Maybe I just want to see my commercial jobs here. And then there is an option even to save these settings. So every time that I run this, I only want to see the jobs except for the completed. I can select save here, and then every time I run this list, it'll come up with these parameters. There isn't anything that you do to a job that makes it just automatically disappear in ProjectHQ. If you close a job in Foundation, if you change the status on the job in the Foundation accounting system, it does nothing here. If you change the status of the job to completed here, it doesn't automatically remove it. You'd have to use this filter to remove it. There's another setting in the job, which we will see here in 1 second, that shows whether the job is active or inactive. So we have two different lists here, active and inactive, which is controlled by a checkbox, if you will, a toggle switch. And then you have the project stage that you can filter on. Again, there isn't anything that we automatically do to make a job fall off the list. We put that control in your hands by making the job either active or inactive, so it goes from one list to the other. And then you can filter on project stage or project type or use the filtering here to determine which jobs you want to see and which ones you don't. So when you change a job to completed, it could remove it from the list, but you just have to make sure that you have those filters set. We're not filtering this at all for you. That control is in your hands. The contact list will have the same functionality. So just real quick so we can see it here, you can click the funnel icon to search your contacts. There are no filters here. Everything is just a searchable column. You can move the columns around. You can right click and pick which ones you want to see. There's no way to add any new ones. You can just hide the ones that are here or turn these back on. And then you can sort the different columns. So that works the same in both the project list and the contact list. There is, of course, some basic information that we set on the project in Foundation. And when we import that job over here to HQ, that basic info would have come over. However, there is some ProjectHQ specific info that we can set on that job to make sure that it's ready to go. So the next person who comes in and is going to do entry or enter something in that job, we have everything that we need and it's set up and ready to go. For example, the weather log or signing into Dropbox, those things that I kind of already touched on. Those are things we'll want to make sure that are done on each project when it's brought over from Foundation into HQ. So those are going to be the next things that we look at here, HQ specific things that we can set on the job to make sure that we've got everything that we need to move forward. So our job here is at the very bottom. And again, we could search for that by clicking the funnel and then searching the job number, the job name, or the job address. Once you select the job, it is going to open up this project menu. And it's going to land us on this dashboard. So like most dashboards, it's just a snapshot of what's out there for this job. Obviously, since we just set this up, there isn't any info here. We haven't received or sent any emails or entered any daily logs or any of this. My weather will show based on the location of that project. But other than that, nothing else is going to show here on a new blank job. What came over from Foundation, if you did want to view that and you can make changes to this, there might be some other things that you might set on your job here, depending on how you customize this system and how you want it to work. But here under the details, this is where we have, for not having another way of putting it, the details of the job. So the job number, the job name, who the customer is, whether it's active or inactive, what project stage are we in here? Is it awarded? Is it in progress? Is it completed? Is it in the warranty period? Those are all things that we can view and then edit by clicking the edit button here in the top right. The other thing we can see here, and this is more informational than anything if you're importing jobs from Foundation, but this Foundation icon in the top right, that's going to show me what job in Foundation my project in HQ is tied to. And you have no reason to do this, but if I have a job number 1, 2, 3 in HQ, I can link it to job number ABC in Foundation. You are able to do that. I don't know why you would. You want your job numbers to match, but you're going to create a link between the records. It's not looking up the job number to determine which job to link it to. We create that link by importing the job, or you can manually remove this link and manually link it to another job if needed for some reason. As long as you're importing stuff from Foundation, you would never have a reason to be mindful of this or to change anything here. If we edit the details of this job, there's just a couple of things here I want to point out. What came over from Foundation, again, was our job number. That's what I created in Foundation. My job name, the customer on this job was Foundation Software. The value of the job, this is the original contract value on the first page of the job. That comes over, and then our job address. In ProjectHQ, you have this project stage. This is not coming from anywhere in Foundation. You can create your own stages here, and this is, exactly what the word stage definition means. You can define where this job is. Again, is it in bidding? Is it in warranty? Has it been awarded, but you haven't started the work yet? And then you can change this at any time, and then use the job list to filter on this stage. There's a project type field here, which is unique to HQ. There's a territory or region, which is unique to HQ. So that just allows you to set those values, what type of work this is, and different users might have different types of work. This is just examples that we put in there. You can completely customize this dropdown. Same thing with territory or region. You're not going to have anything there. You can create those, and then my address for my job. Pro tip, you can add user-defined fields to a project. So a couple of examples I've seen just based on usage of this. One good example was a user had a shared spreadsheet. So in Google Sheets or out on SharePoint or somewhere on the web, they have a shared spreadsheet for every single job. I never even looked into what's on the spreadsheet, but I know that they have a shared spreadsheet for every job. So what the question that was asked to me is, hey, how do I get that spreadsheet into HQ? We can add a user-defined field or a custom field to the project, and that user-defined field could be a URL or a website address. And so if I input or copy and paste the website address for that Google Sheet or that shared spreadsheet, then when you look at this project and we're viewing it here, not editing the details, you can just click that link. And then if it's a shared spreadsheet, it's going to open up that spreadsheet. So that's one example. Another example was a user asked me, where do I put more addresses? My job is a contract, and the contract has more than one address. So where do I put all the additional addresses? Well, there's only one address per job, but you can add as many custom fields as you want to build additional address fields into that project. So there's a lot of different examples. People have listed out estimator or salesman or people that are associated with the job. Anything that you don't have on the project here, you don't see, you can add if needed. So the next thing that we're going to look at is turning that weather on. We enabled the times, we enabled the days of the week in the setup. That's done by an admin, and typically in the first training call and done as soon as we start using this thing. And so then when a project's pulled over, we have to make sure that we turn that on. To turn on the weather log, we're going to navigate here to project settings. So it's all the way at the bottom of this menu, and the only setting here is that weather log. Here we set the time zone. So if my job was in Iowa instead of Ohio here, Central Time, I can switch that time zone so we get the 8 a.m. time at 8 a.m. and not 7 a.m. And then here, I just need to flip on this toggle switch. Now, it's not letting me do that. I'm clicking my mouse here. It's grayed out. I can't turn that on. And the reason is because we need to provide a location. And so there's buttons here to take us to where we need to go. We can hit add address. That takes us back to the details of the job. We can see that we did have an address here. What it's looking for is the latitude and longitude of this address. That's what it needs to do the weather, to get the weather automatically. And we're not going to ask you to enter that. You just click this get coordinates button and it looks it up for you. As long as we have city and state, or you have zip code, the get coordinates button will work. If you don't have city and state, or you don't have zip code, or you're out in the middle of nowhere, you can manually override the coordinates here. Check this box and you can enter them. And then if you're not sure, you can go on like Google Maps, you can drop a pin, it'll tell you this latitude and longitude, and then if you input that here, then when we start getting the weather for the weather log, it'll use that latitude and longitude that you got from your map. So there is that option. Not all of our users have a physical address. I would imagine you'd at least have a zip code or a city and state. If not, then you can manually enter the coordinates. Once we have that info in there and these two fields are populated, we're just going to save this. And then if we flip back to our project settings, we can now turn on that weather log. And I missed my 8 and noon, but at 4 p.m. today for this job, it'll go out, it'll look at the weather in downtown Cleveland here in Ohio, and it'll drop that into the weather log for me based on where that job is located. So that's one thing that's unique to HQ. When we set up a job, we can turn that weather on. If you don't do this, it's not going to generate the weather log until you do. The next thing here, and the order you do this does not really matter. The next thing here would be making sure that we have our Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive integration set up. That information in the projects is going to be found under collaboration and files. And what we're going to see here, in my case, I'm already signed in, so I'm good to go. If you've never signed into this, if this is your first time navigating to a project in ProjectHQ, it's going to show you a sign-in button for whatever file hosting service you signed into in the setup. So in my case, I signed into Dropbox, so when I go to projects, it's looking for Dropbox credentials. Now again, my example is a little bit easier. I'm just going to click sign in here, and I'm good because I'm one person working out of one ProjectHQ folder. The individual users could sign into their own accounts here as long as we share that ProjectHQ folder with them. And again, we could probably spend 45 minutes talking about just that. There are other webinars where we covered that. We can help you in support. I can help you in training. For the example today, we're just going to go ahead and sign into that. There are two things that must be true in order for us to upload an outside document or attachment in ProjectHQ. Those two things are, you have to be signed into a file hosting service, which in this case, I now am. And these folders have to exist in that file hosting service. If we don't have a folder for this job in OneDrive, Google Drive, or Dropbox, you can't upload anything for it. It's got to save these documents in that folder. So if you're using Dropbox, as we kind of saw here with my example, I didn't have to do anything to create these folders. You guys didn't see me go into Dropbox for any reason. It did this for me automatically. That is the one advantage with Dropbox. Out of those 3 file hosting services, this is the only thing that's a little bit different. With Dropbox, when you create a job, it automatically goes in and creates these folders, so I don't have to do anything else here. With OneDrive and Google Drive, when the job is imported, it does not automatically just go in and create these folders. What you would see here, let me sign out of this real quick. Okay, so I have to sign in. And again, in my case, it's the same OneDrive credentials because I'm one person. In your cases, it'd be one person signing in and setup, and then different people signing in under the project. And then this is all I wanted you to see. If you're using OneDrive or Google Drive, this is what you get. If you're already signed in, the next job that I import, I'll still be signed into OneDrive, but I'm going to see this create folder button. So all you have to do is click this. You hit create folder here, it then goes into OneDrive or Google Drive and creates the folders that it needs to save these outside attachments. If you already have existing folders for all these projects somewhere else, maybe they're already in OneDrive, but they're not in the ProjectHQ folder, you can move them or copy them from wherever you have them in OneDrive into the projects folder in the ProjectHQ folder, and then you still would get the create folder button, but when you hit it, it would see that that job folder already exists and it would just point to it. So we can point to your existing job folders, but you got to move them into the ProjectHQ directory. And again, we can help you with that in more detail if needed. That's not the topic for today. But there's definitely flexibility with that. We can't tell ProjectHQ to save something in a different folder in OneDrive, but you can take what you have in OneDrive and move it into the ProjectHQ folder so you can see it all here. Next thing is going to be pulling our budget over. So when I loaded my job into Foundation, I loaded a budget as well. And you can import a budget from an Excel spreadsheet. You can load it, manually enter a budget, however it gets in there. We can import that budget over here to HQ. When the job is imported, it does not automatically import the budget. And there's a good reason for that. We didn't just decide to do that just because. We allow you to import as many jobs as you want at a time. So in a lot of cases, when we get going and start using this, we might import 20, 50, 100 jobs at once. Well, if we try to import 20, 50, or 100 budgets at the same time you're importing 100 jobs, and every budget has, even 10 or 20 line items, it's going to take all day. So we just don't pull all that data at once. So because you have the ability to import more than one job at a time, we do have to navigate to the budget within the project and then click a button here to copy that budget from Foundation into ProjectHQ. So it may kind of feel like an extra step because the budget was there when I imported the job, but there is a good reason why we do this separately. This will evolve over time. We're going to make updates and changes, and there's going to be new features that are released for HQ that will kind of address this. But as of today, you can't do anything with the budget here. It is just a view. If you need to add a line item or change something, you go into Foundation, you change it on the budget there, and then you would sync your budget here, or update it or recopy it over from Foundation. So the only thing you can do here is view it. If you drill into these lines, you can see like what cost types I have under electrical, no entry. It's important to make sure this budget is pulled over, because when we start to enter information for this job, if I go to put in a PO or I go to create a change order and I want to enter a cost code in that PO, you can only pick from these cost codes. It's not going to let you enter a PO for something outside of the scope of the job. So budget changes happen in Foundation. We copy them here. Final thing here that I would describe as part of the job setup, and again, so when I'm done with this last thing, then anybody else that's going to use this job, all the pieces are in place for them to start using it effectively. The last thing here would be the team of my project. So under the resources section of every job, there's the schedule and there's a team. In some other programs, they call this the project directory. It's a good descriptor of what this is. This is anybody that you're going to be dealing with for this project, anybody that you'd communicate with, anybody that would work on this job, anybody that you'd email anything to. Ideally, they're listed here. There are two functions that use this team. One is user setup. Part of the security when you set up users, you can effectively say, this user can only see jobs that they're a team member of. And so you would have to assign them here before they would be able to see this project when they log into HQ. If the other function, some of the contact dropdowns, when you go to pick a contact in a record, some of them will be limited to only the team. And there's some logic to it. We didn't arbitrarily just pick certain fields to do that in. But in some fields, you'll notice that you won't be able to pick from your entire contact list. It'll just show you a limited number of contacts. General rule of thumb, if you open a contact dropdown and you see hundreds or thousands of them, it's showing you the entire directory. If you open another dropdown and it only shows you a handful, It's looking at the team. That's the only other place it would look if it's limiting what contacts you can pick from. And again, the fields make sense. There's a field in the RFI that says who originated the RFI, and it only lets you pick from people and companies that are on the team. They couldn't have originated an RFI if they weren't on that job. When you enter a manpower log, which is you entering what subs you had on a job for a day and how many workers they had there, same thing. It only lets you pick from the companies that are on the companies and the people that are on the team. If they weren't assigned to the job, then how could they have employees working there? So again, there's logic behind it, but generally speaking, if your contact drop down is limited and you don't see everybody, then it's looking at the team of the job. So to add contacts here to the team, in the top right corner, there is an add contact button. You will only see the first handful here. I think it's 10. I never actually counted them. But if you're looking for somebody outside of the A's, you just start typing their name here. And then that will search the contact list. It'll show that name, and then you just hit the plus sign to add them to the project. We're searching either companies or people. And when you add a person, it'll also add whatever company they work for if it was not already added. So in my case here, I added the company of Mac, and then I added the person of Ryan, and it also added the company Foundation Software because that's the company that I work for. So we'd list everybody out here, and then you do have a field where you can identify what that person's role is in that job. So maybe I'm the PM on this one. There is no save button here. When you, it's saved as these rows get added. So then you can just navigate to another part of the project or back completely out of this job. So at that point, we've got our job set up. We can then start to use the other features that are in HQ. And again, I'm not going to go through, here's how you enter an RFI, here's how you enter a submittal. We don't have time for that. There are other webinars and training sessions that we've done on that. I'm just going to kind of go through on a high level on how some of the other functions within HQ work. So first off, the project menu, which in my opinion is really the main menu. I mean, this is where you're going to be spending most of your time. Unless you're going into setup to create a form or you're on the project or contact list, you're in a job. This is where you enter action items and RFIs and create new emails and upload attachments. So this is where you'll spend most of the time. The menu is broken up into these different categories, and then each category at most has 4 things in it. So work management has 4. All the other ones are less than that. You can click a favorites button here. Maybe bookmark is a better word. I don't know that any of these things would be my favorite. But you can select one here if I'm entering daily logs commonly. You can select that star. It'll throw it up in this favorites section. And then anything that you mark as a favorite will live in both places, wherever you can navigate to it normally and then up in the favorites. And then as you're navigating the favorites, stay open. If you want to remove a favorite, you just click the star in the favorite section and it goes away. Work management and cost management are the 2 areas where, again, you would do most of the entry. This is where we create action items, enter daily logs, RFIs, submittals, uploading blueprints and drawings. All that is done under documents. Our punch lists are found here. And then the 2 things that push into the Foundation accounting system, purchase orders and change orders, those exist here under cost management. So a good kind of rule of thumb, there isn't any documentation that shows this, but cost management is the Foundation stuff. It's the budget that pulls from Foundation. It's the change orders we'll push into Foundation. It's the POs, subcontracts, and vendor change orders that we'll create here and then eventually push into Foundation. Each project has its own mailbox. So when a job gets going, you don't have to do anything for this. ProjectHQ does it for you, but each project has its own mailbox. And so we can see that mailbox here under collaboration and files, or collaboration and mailbox. And then there are several different ways that you can get emails saved here. I'm going to actually switch projects so we can look at one that has some data in it. On the dashboard, I can see my 3 most recent emails. I can generate a new email from here. And if we select this option that says Mail App I'm telling the browser to open up my default application on my computer to send emails, which 99% of the time is Outlook. Sorry, I closed Outlook to do this webinar. There we go. So it pulls up a blank email, and here's the project email address. So you're never going to remember that or write that down. But if you do a new email from HQ, it'll automatically copy that. So now I can send this email to whoever, send this email to Terry, attach things to it, type up, compose the email like normal, and it's going to save it in the mailbox of HQ, which again can be found here under collaboration and mailbox. The easiest way to send emails from here is from document entry. When you're entering RFIs and submittals and punch lists and all the different documents we have in HQ, there's a button that says save to just save that document in HQ, and there's another button that says save and send. And clicking the save and send button would automatically generate an email from ProjectHQ. It'll save it in the mailbox for you, and it'll generate that email to whoever you chose to send it to. And then from there, if your recipient of that email then replies to that, they're replying to that project email address. So their reply is saved in here as well. Each document ends up having its own email address. So I can actually go in here and do a search and say, you know what, just show me all the emails for RFI number 14. And then when I close my search, here's where I sent the email from ProjectHQ. This is a system-generated email. And then here's the reply. And the reply was not much, just says option B, please. But the reply is then saved in here also. Any attachments on that reply are then found down here at the bottom. These are all attachments that they live in Dropbox in my case, but I can view them here. And in my case here, there's two emails. You might have a lot of back and forth on a submittal or an RFI or even, just a general email that you send out. All of that would be stored here because when I generate this email from RFI 14, it tags it as RFI 14, and each document technically has its own email address. And so I could go to RFI 14, I can navigate to my work management, my documents, go to, I don't know if I have that one open or closed. Here's 14. I can click on that here to view that RFI, and then the mailbox is going to show me those same two emails that I just saw. I can do a new email from here. If this new blank email that I'm sending is in regards to RFI 14, I can say new email from here and open up my mail app. And that email address is a little different. The first email address we saw started with my job name and job number. This email address starts with RFI number. So not only would this email be saved in the project mailbox, but then it's also going to be saved in this mailbox for RFI number 14, based on how I have that entered. You can forward emails to these email addresses. So there's a lot of different ways to get the emails in there, whether you're forwarding, sending the emails from here. In some cases, our users will send the email to themselves and then forward it from their email address on. There's a lot of different ways that these get in there. And if you forget, or if the recipient of this email does not reply all, they're not replying to this unique email address for this document, you can still forward their reply to this email address to get it in there. So the email is a big thing here within HQ. We can generate emails right from here, and then all of the replies and correspondence and things like that would just be pulled down from the emails as we're sending them to that specific email address. And I'm using an RFI here for an example. That's true in everything. You can email action items. You can email RFIs, submittals, and punch lists, change orders, purchase orders. All the document entry has that save and send button and the ability to track the emails the same way. And then when we go to a different project, different unique email address, all the same functionality. for our daily logs. So this is a project that I had set up, actually it's been set up for several years now. So my weather here did generate at 8 a.m. and noon for me automatically. The only thing I want to point out here with the daily logs, again, the idea with this particular webinar, we're not going to go through all this detailed entry, but I just want to point out here that we are able to pull and sync the labor and the equipment logs from Foundation Mobile. So if you're using the Foundation accounting program and you also have the Foundation Mobile timekeeping app, where employees are out in the field clocking in, clocking out, or entering their payroll hours, rather than you enter their payroll hours here again, we can pull the payroll and equipment hours, if you're entering equipment in mobile, from that mobile application over here into HQ. So the weather log is 100% automatic. If you're using Foundation Mobile, then the labor log and the equipment logs are kind of automatic. You don't have to enter them, but you do have to click a button here to sync them. You don't have to do this every day. And it's pretty rare that people submit time cards every day anyway. You can only grab what's submitted, but we can grab 30 days worth. And you can get any 30-day period. If you just start using this today, but you were using Foundation Mobile for the past 5 months, you can go back to January and pull the time over from mobile into the job here. You just would change the date. We just default it to today and then 30 days backwards. When you hit sync here, nothing's going to happen in my system. I don't have any mobile time cards, but we should never expect anything to change on screen here. This has tripped people up a few times. If I'm pulling my time cards from mobile through 7/6, is my time for today done? Today's not even over. They've not put it all in. They've not submitted it. So nothing would change here on this date. Now, if they submitted the time yesterday, if they submit their time every day, I can flip back to yesterday and I would be able to see that time here. But my point is you can't really expect anything to change on today's date or on screen if you're importing time through today, because the time's not done for today. There isn't anything to pull over here yet unless they're done on this job and already clocked out and submitted their time. So there is that integration with the Foundation Mobile timekeeping app where we can pull the equipment hours and the labor hours from there. The only other thing here, and I've kind of mentioned this already, but as far as workflow and making sure you're getting the most out of this, is when we're entering in change orders and committed costs. If I'm keying a PO or a subcontract, or I'm putting a change order into Foundation, when you go to save these records, the save button is broken up into 2 different buttons because these are the things that push to Foundation. So there's the save button, or the word save, which would just save this in HQ and not do anything else with it. Then there's this arrow that would allow us, if I had something entered here, save and push this to Foundation. And so a couple of general rules of thumb here. 1, for POs and subcontracts, you don't want to push them into Foundation until we know that they're done. Once it's pushed into Foundation, we have to preserve the data integrity of these 2 systems. We can't just let you change stuff in HQ and change stuff in Foundation, because then the POs would never match. And you're going to have a PO for one value in one system, and that same PO is going to have a different value in the other. So we're trying to help prevent that. So that means that once you push a PO or a subcontract into Foundation and you import it into the accounting software, you can't change anything on it here. You can change things like who you'd email it to. You can add a description, but you cannot change the quantities or prices or change anything of what you entered as far as items. We intentionally lock that down. You can enter a change order against it. You can purge the PO from Foundation if it didn't have any other activity on it, and that would free it up here. I mean, you're not completely stuck or dead in the water there, but once a PO is entered and pushed to Foundation, we do lock it down here. So save and push to Foundation, we're going to find in the change orders and in the purchase orders and subcontracts, because those records need to be pushed in the accounting software, so that way we can update all of our reporting and invoice against the POs and AP and things like that. From a reporting standpoint, if we go kind of take a step back here out of the projects, there are reports that we're going to find here in Project HQ, but there's no job costing reports here. You're not going to find anything in Project HQ that's going to tell you cost to date or build to date or margin or percent complete. we intentionally do not have those reports here. Even this one called financial report, cost item report. It doesn't have any dollars in it. It just lists out cost codes that are on your budget. So if you want to look at job costing reports, you want to look at numbers, how's my job doing, what's the margin, what have I billed so far, etc. There's a separate platform called ProjectHQ, which you get with ProjectHQ, which is a reporting dashboard that can be accessed using this icon in the top right corner. Kind of looks like an ice cube tray. If we open up ProjectHQ, and we'll kind of take a quick look here at just what this looks like so you can see the type of data that we're getting from here. So information like my revised contract and my revised cost and my profit, my margins, my billings, my total cost to date, percent complete, and then you can drill into jobs here. You can view budget versus actual and cost broken down by cost type and budget versus actual here. And the point for today is that this is where you would get this type of information from. There's nothing like this in ProjectHQ. The reports in ProjectHQ are things like your RFI log, a way to print those daily logs and send them to the GC or customer, a way to print a PO or your PO log. There actually is a variance report. So the records that we can push into Foundation, the POs and the change orders, there's variance reports for those so we can compare what's in Foundation versus what's in HQ. So if you forget to push one, or if we entered something in Foundation before we started using this, you can then start picking up on those variances or any differences you may have between the two systems. So those are the types of reports that you're going to get from the ProjectHQ reports menu item. All of your other financial data, job costing type reports would be found here in ProjectHQ. And then the whole idea with all of this stuff, all of these HQ web-based platforms, is we can try to get the operations team out of the accounting software. They can do, at this point, they can do almost everything that they would do in Foundation, they can do out here on the web, as far as running reports, entering POs and change orders, tracking the jobs. And then these users that are using this, they don't have to log into Foundation. They're not taking up a user license or a seat there. They don't have to learn to navigate the menus and run reports and set criteria there. They can live out here in this bit more simplified web-based version and look at reports here and do entry here. So that's kind of the goal with all this, is we're trying to get the operations teams out of the accounting program and to work out here to do the scheduling and costing and all of that stuff. I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and end my presentation there. I will open it up for questions for the next 7 minutes or so. If you guys have any questions, there is a question box in the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar menu. Go ahead and throw any of your questions in there, and then I will ask them out loud and provide an answer if there's anything that you guys have questions on. Let's see. Do we have any attendees that I can pick on? I think we got a whole new group here. I don't know that I've worked with a lot of you guys. So far, no questions. So we'll leave it open for another minute or two here. If nothing comes through, you are free to go. And this webinar is recorded, so you can share this or go back and look at this at any time. And then if you guys have any questions or need anything in regards to ProjectHQ, you can reach out to me directly or contact Foundation support. A question did come through. Nicole asks, how do you close out a PO in HQ? And my answer on this one is, this is going to change, because right now you cannot. Once you push a PO into Foundation, one of the things that they are locking is the status. When we programmed that, that was done in error. We don't intend to lock down the status. You need to be able to change that. So we will free up that status for you to be able to change it. You will be able to change the status to closed And then farther down the road, we're going to have more communication with the foundation database. So when a PO closes in foundation because you invoiced it in full, it will automatically close in HQ, but that is a little bit farther into the future. So as of today, my answer is you cannot close them. They're going to remain open. You cannot change the status. We will correct that in an update here in the very near future to allow you to change that status so you can manually switch it to closed. And then long term, we will have more communication with foundation total close automatically. So Nicole, you're not missing anything there. You just cannot change that status right now. Any other questions? Going once? All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar here. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. So again, if you guys need anything, you can contact me directly or Foundation Support. And I appreciate you guys joining. Have a great rest of your day.